In a world that can be challenging, and at times unpredictable, it's hard to find moments to focus on what you need. Join Stephanie James on The Spark as she guides you to use your inner flame to ignite your best life. As a best-selling author, psychotherapist, transformational life coach, and international show host, Stephanie is dedicated to helping you create a life that takes you, your goals, and your passions to the next level, so you can live a life that is fully lit up and fully alive. She believes that your life is meant to be a beautiful expression of the things that light you up. That by living your dreams, you give permission to others to do the same. Are you ready to feel alive and inspired to fuel your dreams and put a fire behind your desires? Let's ignite a spark in one another that will illuminate the world. The Spark, with your host Stephanie James, starts now.
Welcome to The Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James. Tonight, we have such a special person with us. We have award-winning author, activist, artist, and the co-founder and executive director of the Loving Kindness Foundation, Jan Phillips. Jan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me here.
Well, there's just so much. Oh my gosh, I was looking over your website and you've written, I don't know, 15, 16 books?
Well, 12.
Okay. And what is your latest book?
The latest book coming out next week is called Still on Fire, Field Notes from a Queer Mystic. So it's a departure from my usual because it's a memoir. It's a spiritual memoir about the trajectory of a Catholic kid who becomes suicidal at age 12 and is saved by a nun. So the kid then decides to become a nun so she could save other kids. So she enters the convent at age 18 and gets dismissed at age 20 because, of course, she is gay and that convent is no place for homosexuals. So that being dismissed from the convent was a major traumatic event of her life. So a lot of the book is about how does one overcome the most terrible rejections one feels as we go through our life. And all of us experience these things. Most of us don't get kicked out of a convent, but we all know what it feels like to be rejected. And so it kind of disentangles, it teases out the difference between spirituality and religion. And it also helps people disentangle from negative belief systems that we acquired along our religious path.
Yes. You know, I have so many clients in my own practice that say that they're, recovering Catholics.
Yeah.
And having to untwist from some of that deeply ingrained belief system that for them really became oppressive and ways that they weren't able to truly be in touch with their own essence because they were really experiencing themselves through this filter of I'm not okay. I'm born a sinner, some different things like that. I'm really curious for you. Was there a part in there for you that felt like when you got kicked out of the convent, did it feel like God also was turning his or her back on you, or how did you experience that?
Yes, it felt exactly like that. Well, it came as a big surprise to me because I never expected to be dismissed. But once I was home with no roots and no ties to anything like a monastic life, I did feel like, oh my God, even God has abandoned me here. But so, I moved to California from upstate New York just to get out of Dodge. And the first parish that I went to right in my neighborhood, I started teaching the kids guitar and we learned how to sing folk masses. And so we were delivering folk masses to the community until the priest found out I was gay. And he said to me, I am not giving you absolution until you stop being gay. And I don't want you around this parish anymore. So that was kind of the Catholic Church's official rejection. So yeah, there was my religious community, the official Catholic Church, and then God Almighty. It was a big blow.
Holy cow. Yeah. I'm like sitting here thinking, talk about, as you said, traumatic and devastating. How do you recover from something like that? How did you recover?
Well, it took 20 years, and I had no religious affiliation, but 2 years in a convent really steeped me in a spiritual, I won't say spiritual practice because I had no discipline, but I was always drawn towards the spiritual questions. And when I became a social activist and made a peace pilgrimage around the world in 1983, when Ronald Reagan was doing all his nuclear weapon proliferation. And during that time, I met up with spiritual masters in different traditions, Buddhist, Hindu, Islam, etc. So it really got driven home to me, the value of West meeting East, the value of stillness meeting action, Buddha meeting Jesus. So I feel like I metabolized the best of the world religions. And I'm not much for obedience and having bosses. So I become my own spiritual authority, right? And I have had a spiritual practice since 1990. That's always the same. It's just get up in the morning, light the candles, be there quietly, no phones or anything around, nothing to read. Just open myself like a satellite dish to supreme intelligence. And for anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes, sometimes it just goes on because it's such a beautiful milieu to be in. So I have that spiritual practice, which informs my life and contributes to my confidence in my own spiritual authority.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing is like this beautiful, like direct link.
Direct link. That's a good one.
It
is.
Have to go through anything
like,
else.
my invisible dance partner. I go,
Yeah.
hey, hello, I'm here. Emily Dickinson says what she said back then when she was writing, the only news I get is bulletins all day from immortality.
Wow.
That's how she said it. So my mailing list, I got 9,000 people on my mailing list. Every Sunday morning, they get in their email box a bulletin from immortality, which is a thought for me about their lives being meaningful, passionate, easy, joyful, deep, wondrous. I do everything I can do to support my peeps having great lives.
It's so beautiful. And I want to talk to you later about your Loving Kindness Foundation. Absolutely. And I want to go back right now to your journey. Number one, being able to have that world experience and meeting with all these masters. And sounds like you really were able to integrate and assimilate those pieces into you so that it wasn't about so much religion, but spirituality. After you left the convent, what happened next?
Well, I moved to California. I tried to figure out what could I do that was most like being a nun. And that, to me, the answer to that would be social work. It's like a secular nun. But I didn't have any college degree. And so in California, best I could do was be a waitress. which always was my go-to job. So I'm 20 years old being a waitress in California until a friend of mine said, come back to Syracuse. I can get you a job as a community organizer in a federal anti-poverty program. So that's what I did. I came back, I became a kind of social worker in urban environments with Black and brown communities, and rural environments with poor white folk, and did that for many, many years until I finally was able to cobble together a bachelor's degree. And in 1975, I took up photography, became my tool as an activist. And because I was at every demonstration and rally, it started out being anti-nuke stuff, but then it became feminists, women's movement, gay pride. So everything I am, parts of me were always being oppressed in one way or another. So I photographed all these movements I participated in. And that's what I traveled around the world with, a slideshow of the peace movement and the women's movement. Put to music, soundtrack. So I'm not a teacher. I'm not going to educate. I'm not going to talk about how many Pershing missiles we have. I'm just going to give you inspiring images to show what people are doing, because the news, CNN doesn't tell us. Well, there was no CNN back there, I don't think, but the news, it's if it bleeds, it leads. That's a premise that still controls the press, I think. They're all about drama, conflict, bad news. So I'm the carrier of good news. And so I saved up $5,000, and my commitment was to start in Japan, visit Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and be with as many people I could be to share my slides, and go as long as I could go until my money ran out, which was 1 year. Because I didn't stay in hotels, I stayed with families. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest experience was I got to show my slides at the Nagasaki Peace Museum. And it was a day when all the Japanese word for the survivors of an atomic or hydrogen bomb is hibakusha. So there's about 80 hibakusha left alive still in Nagasaki. At least there was back in the 80s when I was there. So they were having a meeting, and they were going to see a film that day. So the director of the Nagasaki Peace Museum asked me would I like to speak at that event. And so that was the occasion. And I said yes, and I'd like to interview one of the hibakusha beforehand if I could. So I spent the whole morning with a translator, with a woman who told me the whole story of her undoing, having experienced in her, I think, early 20s when she was bombed. And so I had a really rich interview with her. And then I went to talk to the group, but first they watched this movie, which was a terrible event. It was done by a Japanese director who had recently declassified footage from the US military. And that's all we knew, but it was a short film. And it started out, aerial view, looking at the Nagasaki Peace Park, which is beautiful, big sculptures, a lot of flowers, thinking it's going to be gorgeous. And then it changes to the cockpit of the Enola Gay, or whatever the name of the plane was. And then you see the bomb drop, and then you see the mushroom cloud. And then it switches to the cameras on the ground, and people are being photographed shortly after the bomb. And you could tell there were people in the room who saw themselves. and they were shrieking out in horror, sobs, muffled cries. It was so terrible. I was sitting next to the director, and he put his head down on the table and cried and cried. And, you know, the Japanese are famous for not showing emotion. So it was like such a terrible darkness in the room. And all the lights were off because it was a movie. And then the movie stopped running. And you hear everybody trying to control, you know, and nobody ever turned the lights on. So for like 10 or 15 minutes, we just sat there until it became very still. And then the lights got turned on. And then the director says to me, "All right, it's your turn." And I didn't know what to do. I stood up and I just started crying. And I said, I'm so sorry. I was just so sorry, because it was my country that did it, this and that. And then I said, I'm going to show you pictures of what Americans are doing so that this never happens again. So the slideshow goes on, it's only 5 or 6 minutes, but picture after picture after picture of carrying signs: never another Nagasaki, no more Hiroshima, end to nuclear weapons, no more atom bombs. And it was the first time they ever saw that. And they were flabbergasted. And one by one, they came up to me afterwards and said, "You give us such hope, because we thought nobody cared. We thought nobody remembered us." And so it was a really remarkable kind of materialization of that phrase, "A picture is worth 1,000 words." So I know that Peace Pilgrimage made a dent in a lot of people's lives, mostly mine.
So powerful. Oh my gosh, Jan. Wow. I mean, just to have touched those people's lives and to have this experience just now so deeply carried within you. I mean,
Yeah,
it just touches me as
absolutely.
well. And anyone to hear this, just the power of that and the power of sharing those images. And at this time too, in what's going on in our world, I think being able to have something, a picture not only says 1,000 words, it shows the truth.
Yes, it shows the truth. Well said.
And I just feel like, yeah, then there's no denying it. Just like, the Japanese people were really able to see the beauty of people that really do care. And how amazing, Jan, for you capturing those images.
Yeah. Just being
Really,
where I was, just saying,
yeah.
my tribe.
Yeah, I love that. And I love this conversation. We're going to have to take a quick break. Everyone, stay tuned, though, for this amazing conversation. Just coming back to talk with award-winning author, activist, and amazing artist, Jan Phillips. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I am here with award-winning author, artist, and activist, also co-founder and executive director of the Loving Kindness Foundation, Jan Phillips. We've just been having a really moving conversation. First, talking about her book, which I think sounds incredible. And I want to go back to that, her latest book that's out, and also just talking about some of Jan's journey, which has really been a powerful journey. Jan, you spoke about this latest book being a memoir, and so it's depicting your life. And really, you said, part of it is acknowledging the struggle that we all go through when we're rejected by things. And I know people always get asked, what made you write this book? And I don't want to just ask that black and white question, but I guess what inspired you at this time in your life to share that story?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One is because I know what it's like to be bound to religious traditions, because Catholicism was installed in me, like it's installed in all of us, through every sense, with every bit of incense, candles, ritual, vestments, gorgeous. Catholics are the kings and queens of ritual. So when that happens to you and you're in a young body, I was in love with Catholicism. I was so happy to be that. And I bought the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker, which is why I became suicidal when I realized I was gay. Because it's like, uh-oh, this is terrible. God hates queers and I am one. What do I do now? So I have figured out how to be from that place of buying the whole thing to being at this place where I am now, traveling around the country, being a facilitator of spiritual intelligence and evolutionary creativity. So how does it happen? How does it happen that one goes from feeling they done me wrong, they did this to me, to knowing, oh, this happened for me? So that's the spiral of evolution, right? And it only happened, it took 20 years because I was majorly mad at the community for doing that to me. How could you do that to me? You've ruined my life. And I tried everything, talk therapy. I tried drugs and alcohol. I tried promiscuity. I tried everything I could do to get it off my mind, to get over it, through it, under it, around it. And I couldn't. It was like my sad story. And so I was partners with a woman named Annie, who we went to grammar school together. We were in the convent together. She was also a mystic and she understood me really well. And one day she called out to me and she said, "Hey, Marian Ripsky's teaching chemistry over at St. John the Baptist." And that translates into this. The woman who was the head honcho of our community in our mother house of 400 sisters has been missioned out of leadership, and she's just now teaching science over at the parish nearby us. She said, maybe you should talk with her and see if you can get any closure. Because I couldn't talk with my novice director because she had died of stomach cancer. So the only thing that I knew that I could get any help from was a letter a woman's, one of the top leaders sent to me that said, why was Jan Phillips dismissed from the convent? And that letter said, we didn't have a religious disposition because of her excessive and exclusive friendships. They have a big, high fear of homosexuality in the convent. They call it carnal relationships. So anyway, I go to this Sister Marian Ripsky. I call her up. I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was there and in the novitiate I was dismissed. She goes, oh yes, I remember you. And I asked her, could I come over, sit in the parlor with her, tell her the story and see if I could get my heart unlocked, because I'd been frozen since this happened. And that happened in 67. And this is like 1990, or it happened in 69. So she said, yes, come over. Long story short, we sit there, we're kind of knee to knee in the parlor. I say, let me just go through the whole story. I'm going to start at age 12, and then I'm going to stop today. And please don't interrupt me. And then you can talk. And I said, I'll cry through the whole thing. Just don't worry about it. So that's what happened. I talked, I cried. And at the end, she sat there in total silence for a while. And then she said to me, sister, will you forgive me for the terrible injustice that was done to you on my watch? And that kind of caught me off guard because I wasn't there anticipating that. I go, yeah, of course I forgive you. It's like, no, it cost me nothing. And she said, and will you forgive the entire community of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet for this terrible injustice that was done to you? And I said, yes, yes, I forgive the entire community, da, 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 da. And then after I said that, it was as if this light enters into the room, enters into my being, and the awareness, it turned around. The whole thought turned around in my mind, and it was like, I should be thanking you. I don't have to forgive you. I want to thank you for giving me the privilege of having 2 years of a monastic life and then letting me go so I could be this force in the world. And so that's what happened. It was a miracle for me because a full and complete healing took place. And then on the way home, part B happened, where I got to see, like a movie, all the situations where I acted to create that I would get myself kicked out. I caused it. Every move I made, going into so-and-so's bedroom, disobeying the rules, smoking cigarettes in the woods, everything that I did, a plan, unconscious, a plan, because I wasn't to be a nun. I'm not nun material. They knew it. I just didn't know it. So that's what happened to me. I learned the lesson that day. There's nothing to forgive. And now, as I extrapolated onto my life, no matter what has happened to me, the other side of the dualistic story is it also happened for me. And so I'm able to identify every tragedy, turbulence, crisis of my life. I can tell you what it gave to me, as long as besides what it took from me.
Yeah. Well, and how powerful. I mean, what an incredible transformation. And I'm wondering too, how does that inform your life as you move forward and into, we've been on these really uncertain times right now. How does that help?
Well, I think that event in my life, that story with Sister Marian Ripsky, I think it's a very big story. It's like a universal, it's almost mythical, right? The kid, after so many years of trying to get, trying to figure it out, it all gets figured out on that day. And so as I teach, like I just came back from facilitating a week-long retreat in Massachusetts. On that retreat, there's 20 of us in a circle, 20 women in a circle. And one whole day, I tell that story and we take it apart. And we figure out, what does this mean for us? Because kind of, if that phrase, if she can, I can, we kind of live with that kind of hearing, right? I didn't know I could go around the world till my friend Patty O'Connor went around the world. And once she did, I said, wow, if Patty O'Connor can do it, I can do it. And then I turned mine into this big noble pilgrimage, right? So every one of the women in that room had a chance to take that story and look at all the disappointments and rejections in their lives, and then figure out, did that happen for me? And did I co-create that? How did I make that happen? Because it just feels like it's raining on us, right? When it's just raining.
Well, and that's one of the most powerful parts, of course, of the story is when you really got like, what did I contribute to this?
Right.
And you shifted in that moment from a victim to someone who actually was like, oh no, I'm co-creator. I mean, what a powerful place to be. Even if we don't like the outcome, it's like, oh no, I co-created this. And so now I also have the inner power to co-create what I want, being more conscious of that moving forward.
Exactly. That was it. And it's, why did it take me 20 years to figure it out? Well, because I wasn't ready. Because you get something out of having a sad story, and people come to me. That's why I started doing these story spinning retreats, because women come and they love their sad story because it gets them attention. They get to sit right there in front of the fireplace. We're all sitting there listening to their sad story. But then after we all cry and howl and rage, then they have to spin it around and go further and acknowledge how did this happen for me? And nobody has not been able to do that yet. It just takes some coaching and nudging and prodding. So, I think that we're a society we're so dualistic in our approach to everything. That's either good or bad, right or wrong. Country Western thrives on they done me wrong stories. So, for us to figure out, there's another way of looking at the stories of our lives. But I'll tell you, writing this memoir, any other book I write, it takes a couple months, goes from A to Z, piece of cake. But this, there was never I thought the finishing line was here, but it kept going down, 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 down. So I was like diving, spelunking. It took me forever, 3 years, because I hadn't gained the insight I needed to have in order to create a memoir that wasn't blaming anybody, or that really could acknowledge in a literary way how powerful we all are.
That's so beautiful. It's like, I just had this image, even watching you, just like it going down to the depth of your being. It had to be from that pure place, which is our essence.
Yeah, pure place, which is our essence.
That then, right, again, emanates what the deeper truth is. I mean, I just really resonate with that and love that part of this journey for you. So 3 years to write it, and how amazing that you stayed with that. What did you feel like you were learning along the way about yourself as you're seeing yourself on paper? It's one thing to tell our story, but it's another thing as we're, as an author myself, I know when we're telling our own stories, it can take on very different meaning for us. And we're able to look at ourselves in this kind of, we're holding ourselves out here about 3 feet and like, wow, I went through that.
Yeah, well, I tell you, a big thing that was hard is like the initial impulse of a memoir for me was, I'll be the hero, right? I get to be the hero of my own story finally. And so in the first drafts, I would be the hero, and everybody else would be the antagonist. And we'd have our battles and I'd win, and then I'd start the next chapter. And then it soon became very clear that was just a big fat sham. And so I had to revisit all my chapters and give every person who I was blaming, fully flesh them out. Have the reader be able to have an appreciation of them like they had of me the night I get kicked out of the convent. Have them see my superior's good points, her strengths, how hard it was for her, right? Because for 20 years, I'm just going, dang it, meanie, I'm glad you died, right? That kind of. But in the middle of the memoir, because I'm older now and because I have more compassion now, I was able to give higher regard to all the players in my life. And to be able, there's even a chapter there called The Great Betrayal. I wrote a whole chapter on how in high school, I betrayed one of my best friends by saying to her, we think you're queer. I'm like the leader of the pack, right? There's like 8 of us. She's in the pack. And I say, we're not going to have anything to do with you anymore because we think you're a leslie. This is projection, right?
Yeah.
So I'm the leader of the group, and I say, Bonnie McHale's, I think she's a leslie. Let's not do anything. Let's shun her. So I write her this big letter, last day of school, give it to her. We're not going to have anything to do with you anymore. And then I go out of town for 2 weeks to go up north to be with my cousins. So Bonnie McHale was my best friend all growing up. That I picked her to do it to was pretty weird. She also remains my good friend. We also went to Europe together, where she fell in love with a Dutch guy, married him, and ends up CEO of Time Life Warner in Australia. And on her last trip over here from Australia, we're both in our early 70s. We sit right here on the couch in my office. I get on my knees to apologize to her. I cry. She cries. I say, tell me the story of what it felt like to get that letter. We took about 2 hours going through it. So I gave her a chance to pummel me with her own grief and sorrow over that, and gave her a chance to come to some closure with it. So to put that whole chapter in the middle of my memoir is an example of, you probably couldn't ever come up with something to do that was as mean as this thing that I did to her. Because I'm trying always to figure out ways to get people to forgive themselves. And I think this chapter will help some people forgive themselves.
Absolutely. And it's the power of, if we want to call it redemption, it's this power of truly being able, like it's never too late.
It's never too late. There's always time to say, I'm sorry, I bungled it. I hurt you. Please forgive me.
Yeah. Yes. I know that I've done that in my own life. I think there's so much power in making amends when we realize how we've hurt someone, and how beautiful to be able to be face to face with someone, to have continued a friendship, and to really, what a powerful thing I'm hearing, Jan, too, to make space so that we're really honoring and holding that other person in a way where we can really hear their pain, and we can really share in that pain. And then that's how we heal.
Yeah. Well said.
Well, we're here for another break. This continues just to be such a meaningful conversation. Looking forward to all the listeners joining us after this break as we come back with the wonderful Jan Phillips. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Spark. I'm your host, Stephanie James. Find out all the amazing events that are going on right now on stephaniejames.world. I am excited right now to have with me Jan Phillips, activist, award-winning author, artist, and co-founder and executive director of Living Kindness. I said it incorrectly in the beginning of the show. It's Living Kindness. Also, a lot of love I'm feeling through this entire conversation. So I can see how I could have put loving, because you are such an amazing, loving presence, Jan.
Ooh.
Tell us about Living Kindness Foundation. How did that get started?
Oh, this is a great story. I was invited to go to Nigeria to lead a weekend retreat on visionary leadership for a community of Dominican sisters. They're all Nigerian sisters except for one who's from Kansas, a pasty white person like me. And it was running an NGO over there called Hope for the Village Child. So she heard about me, read my book, The Art of Original Thinking, and said, would you come all the way here to do this workshop? So I looked to see what she was involved with, and I had just already known in my mind that it was time for me to do international work. So I had only decided Africa was the continent, but I didn't know, and I thought it was going to be women in education or women in water. I just kind of intuited that would be the work. So anyway, I said to her, yes, I will come. I'll do that weekend retreat. And in return, you take me to 4 or 5 of the villages where Hope for the Village Child is having an impact. So long story short, last day, visiting the last village, you have to go by Land Rover because the roads are pretty not navigable. So we pull into the driveway. There's what they call schools built, which is just about the shape and size of a single wide trailer cut up into 4 rooms. But there's no desks, there's no books, there's no accoutrement for learning, right? It's just a pretty sad case. And so it's like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. We pull up into the driveway, and outside the school, there's about 45 or 50 kids all lined up. They got boulders out there separating what might be first grade from second grade or third grade, but they're waiting. I said, what are they doing over there? And the driver said, they're waiting for their teacher to come. I said, at 2:30 in the afternoon? Yeah, teachers rarely come. So by now, the kids have all raced over to the Land Rover, opened my door, pulled my shirt, and dragged me to one of their classrooms. They all sit down. I'm standing in the front of the classroom, and they go, be our teacher, be our teacher. And I am not a teacher of elementary school kids, so I didn't know what the hell to do. I go, okay, what's 2 + 2? And they're like this, 4. So proud of themselves. And I get nervous. I go, oh my God, they've already been taught. I got to make this tricky for them, give them something they won't be able to answer. So I said, what's 8 + 7? 15, they say. And I started to cry. And I said, oh, I'm crying and smiling at the same time because I'm saying to them, this is your lucky day, because you needed me to be here, because I am going to help you get the teacher that you need. I am your helper today, and I will do it as fast as I can. So I go to Sister Rita and I say, look, at these kids need, what's wrong? How come they don't have a teacher? Well, what's wrong is teachers, nepotism, they get paid whether they show up or not. Plus, for the most part, they can't get there because the roads aren't navigable. You need this or that. So we concluded that if there was apartments on the ends of the schoolhouse, then the teachers could live there in the community. So we said, let's do that. And then we said, let's build a computer center with 2 apartments on the ends. Let's do that. Let's go to the tribal chief, see if he'll give us land. So go to the tribal chief, he gives us land. Go to the villagers. Do you guys want to build this thing? If we can get it made? Yes, we'll build it. And so then I fly back to the US and start figuring out Zoom.com, how to start a foundation. And Sister Rita had to get a quote for how much will it cost to make this building with 2 apartments. It was $25,000. So I started right away coming up, doing fundraisers, writing grants, so I had the $25,000 within 2 years. It was all built, got commissioned by the tribal chief. And so now, and then I did more grant writing. So now there's like 30 computers in there, and the kids use it in the day and the farmers use it at night because they're organic farming and they're trying to get better marketing tips, etc. So that's the Living Kindness Educational Center in the middle of this little village, Ikuza, in Nigeria. And that's how it happens. We get our hearts broken open. And then we say, what's my heart's desire? And when those 2 things combust, when they merge and combust, then new life occurs. And so the new life was the Living Kindness Foundation. But it starts with our hearts getting broken open.
Just like yours did in that classroom,
Yeah.
in that schoolroom. Oh my
Always starts
goodness.
with tears for me.
What an amazing story, though, Jan. How incredible. I mean, touching all these people's lives. Have you been able to go back and visit?
I haven't gone back to visit because Africa is a hard country for me. I didn't do well there. My blood pressure went down really low. I was sick a lot. So I haven't gone. They send me videos and pictures. But since that project is done, I still have money in the Living Kindness account. So now I'm devoting all the Living Kindness resources to anti-racism causes in this country. And so I give scholarships to Black women, mostly writers, who are doing, creative work to undo the racism that prevails in this country.
Beautiful. Yeah, so beautiful. I mean, so I just see all the multifaceted ways, Jan, that you're sharing your gifts, and just your beautiful heart with the world. And so this book is coming out soon. Say the name of the book again. It's so long that my ADD brain cannot always remember it.
Well, the title is short, Still on Fire.
But it's got a secondary title.
Yeah, the subtitle is Field Notes from a Queer Mystic.
Thank you.
Yeah, because
Still on fire.
Doing all this while being queer, that certainly has hurdles and obstacles to it. But I'll tell you what, there's like 30 chapters in the book, and there may be only, let's see, there's a couple that deal with how come I ended up being a nun, that has to do with being a little queer kid. And then in the convent, that mess about being gay in the convent. And then the coming out stories and that mess with my family. But primarily, the stories don't have anything to do with being gay, just like the Living Kindness story has nothing to do with being gay. But it was really important for me to put queer mystic there because we're still suffering terrible violence, queers and trans people both, terrible violence, murders, beaten up, thrown off buildings, Middle East, Africa, here, Miami, Philadelphia, every week. You read terrible stories about what's happening to queers and trans people. And so I said, I'm standing up, I'm acknowledging it. And so my community can take advantage of this and know that you have an ally who's doing it anyway.
Wow. Yeah. Once again, I mean, so powerful, Jan. And I love it because you are still on fire.
I am still on fire. You're right.
I can see it just shines through you. And what was absolutely incredible for those people that will be watching this and not just listening, when you were talking about being with the nun that had been in the monastery with you, and that you had that breakthrough, right as you were moving your hands to say breakthrough, and this light just came in. Light really came in the room all around you.
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it was awesome. Awesome. So you are still on fire, Jan. And so what's up ahead for you? What are you looking forward to? What's next?
Well, I think I have in me a small book called Stop Seeking, Start Finding. Because I realize when people say to me, I'm a seeker, I'm a spiritual seeker, I go, it's like a little stab in my heart, and I go, oh, too bad, I'm a finder, right? You want to be a finder? Come with me. I'll tell you how to be a finder, right? Because seeking, it's got its own stuff to it. It's not bad being a seeker. There's yearning, longing, desire, please, there's all that. But when you're a finder, there's only living in the bliss of it. There's only waking up to the splendor of it. It's like, I don't have to go far to be in communion with the great thing. It's right here in my lungs. It's here in the air I'm breathing. It's like, does a fish seek water? So I'm just thinking I could probably make it really easy. A little book, really easy for people to rethink. There's no virtue in seeking, I don't think, It's best just to make that quantum leap, be a finder, find it, and stick with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we do. We keep ourselves so busy with, being a human doing. That's that seeking. And it's, what I'm hearing from you too, and is my own experience, is we stop and just open up to it. It's like the essence of our being. Then we find it right within us. And it's
Yes.
always been there.
Yes. That's the good news.
That's the great news, that we don't have to go. I love that. It's as close as your own breath. And that's my morning ritual, Jan, as well, as I go out into the backyard, no matter what the weather is. It could be snowing, it could be raining. And I put my bare feet on the ground and put my hands up to the sky and just soak it in. And it's just this beautiful receiving of what's there, and then being in deepest gratitude. And so that's it.
That's it. That's all there is.
That's all there is. We don't have to go.
Deepest gratitude.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, the book, as we said, is Still on Fire. Please pick it up. Just such an amazing conversation, Jan. Thank you so much for just being such an important voice in the world, and for sharing all these incredible messages. I just feel really honored to have you on the show.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks for your delicious questions.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Spark with Stephanie James. Remember that you already have what you need to live a life that is fully lit and fully alive. You're already holding the flame. Now it's time to ignite your best life. Learn more at stephaniejames.world. That's stephaniejames.world. And tune in next week at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, only on transformationtalkradio.com. Shine on!